Hi. All right. So, hi everybody. I'm sorry. I got into something and yeah. Sorry for being late, but hi Lisa L. Hi everybody. It was actually Scooter that made us late. She was a half an hour late coming to the stage.
You know me.
She's always the diva. Okay.
I have, oh, I'm just getting your notification. You're live.
Oh, good. Okay, so we're going to do today is prosecution witness 22. This is our 22nd witness for the prosecution, and it's Byron Durerfeld, and he's from the Modesto PD. And our witness will be played by Scooter. I will be doing the role of Rick DeStasso and Garagos, and Sharon will be playing the part of the judge and the clerk.
Now, Sharon, if you want to do the big part, I'll do the judge and the clerk. It's up to you. Whatever you want to do, hon.
Fine. She just has to send it to me, that's
Oh,
all.
I sent it to you in Slack. You didn't get it?
I'm good. I'm good.
You didn't get it? Oh gosh, you need that ear thing?
No, just right now to hear Sharon. I wanted to see what she said.
Oh,
I said, I'm good. It's okay.
she's
Okay,
just
are you
crying a
sure?
little bit behind the scenes,
Yeah.
but it's okay.
Okay, my dear.
She's all good. Crying a little bit behind the scenes.
I have it whenever you want to start.
Okay, I'm just gonna put on the live chat, and then I'm gonna start. I don't know why I'm gonna put on the live chat because I can't even see it.
Kevin said we can't hear Sharon. Sharon, if you could please move your mouth to the microphone, please. Move your mouth to the microphone. Thank you.
What'd you say, Nicole?
They can't hear Sharon well.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I can't. That's why I have to always hold that thing.
Okay, so we're going to go and start with this. Let me get to I think you have the first line, Sharon.
How's that?
Yeah, okay. You have the first line, Sharon.
Byron Duerfeld, witness for the people, June 10th, 2004. Direct examination by Rick DeStasso.
Be seated. State and spell your name for the record.
Byron Duerfeld, Duerfeldt.
First name, please.
Byron, Byron.
Go ahead, Mr. DeStasso.
Sergeant Durerfeld. You're a sergeant with the Modesto Police Department?
Yes, sir.
And what are your current duties?
My current duties, I am currently assigned to the Evidence and Property Unit.
And on December 24th of 2002, were you also a sergeant in the Modesto Police Department?
Yes, I was.
And at the time, what were your duties?
My duties were patrol supervisor. I was working what we call the 3rd platoon, which is from noon till 11 o'clock at night.
And how long have you been a police officer, a sworn peace officer with the state of California?
25 years.
On December 24th of 2002, did you get a call to respond or go to 523 Covina
Yes, I did.
in the city of Modesto?
Yes.
Okay, what time did that call come to you? Do you remember?
It was 5:58 p.m.
And where were you geographically in the city? How far away from 523 Covina were you?
The Covina address is in southeast Modesto. I was way up in the northeast corner of Modesto, which is approximately 8 to 9 miles away.
Okay, and after you got the call, what kind of vehicle do you use? Car?
Yes, it was a marked black and white police vehicle.
Is that your normal police car with the lights and the whole bit?
Yes.
All right, and did you drive over to 523 Covina?
Initially, I responded to East La Loma Park.
Oh, and I put a new, no, hold on a minute. And I put a new aerial on the board. Your Honor, can I have that mark next in order?
It's a brand new one. 36.
36. It's a wider aerial view of the park. Sergeant Duerfeld, looking at People's 36, do you recognize this as an aerial of Modesto? Can you come take a look at it? I can lead you through it. You recognize this. Do you see this here? Here's the tennis courts. Do you recognize this as Dry Creek Park area?
Yes, I do.
So you went to the park first, is that right?
Yes.
And what time did you get to the park? Do you remember?
I'm guessing around 6:15 p.m.
Okay, and where exactly in the park did you go?
It's the entrance of East La Loma Park. It's near the covered picnic area, the main parking lot of that particular park.
Okay. Lost my hold on, don't say anything. Why can't I find that part? Anytime I take my eyes off there for like 1 minute, this is like the craziest. I wish it could be color coded.
I know.
Don't really don't. I'm freaking myself out. Did you? Was your last thing go to the Covino address? Was that yours? Was that what was your last line?
It's the entrance of East La Loma Park.
Yeah, that was the last
It's the
one.
entrance. Okay. Okay, is that up by the tennis courts?
Yes.
And what did you do?
I was just there briefly because 3 other officers, Officer Evers, Officer Spurlock, and Officer Letzinger, were leaving the park to go to the Covina address.
And those 3 officers are the regular patrol officers in the Modesto Police Department?
Yes, they are.
And would they have been under your command because you were the sergeant on the scene?
Yes.
Okay, and did you meet with them in the park?
It was just very brief in essence. They were moving to the Covina address.
Okay, and what happened next?
I contacted the communications center and advised them to contact the local hospitals to check to see if a pregnant woman had recently been admitted into the hospital. And I began to communicate with Lieutenant Abel, who was what we call the watch commander during this shift, about getting a helicopter launched to be on searching the area.
The watch commander, the lieutenant who is on duty, does that person also drive around the city in a patrol car?
No, he's stationed at the police department.
So he stays at the police department and you kind of call in resources to try to line that stuff up?
Yes.
Okay, so you spoke to him about the helicopter. What happened next?
Then I drove to the Covina address.
And when you got to the Covina address, did you park your car somewhere?
Yes, I parked my car facing the opposite direction, directly in front of the driveway of the Covina address.
And what happened when you were there? Can you just describe when you first got there and what was going on?
Well, the 3 officers went into the home to secure it, to just make sure there was no one in the house. Other family members and friends who were at the park were also arriving at the residence, so I was just kind of monitoring or making sure that no one went into the house at that point.
Okay.
Now, where is that coming from?
What happened next? What?
Do you hear that? The background noise?
My puppies?
Huh?
My puppies?
Uh-uh.
I don't hear background noise, do you?
No.
Yeah, I did.
What kind
It's
of
stopped now. People talking. I believe the next thing what happened was the defendant went into the house with the 3 officers.
Okay, do you recognize Mr. Peterson as he sits here today in court?
Yes, I do.
Okay, and so he was the one that went into the house with the 3 officers?
Yes.
Okay, and you did not at that time accompany them into the house?
No.
And while they all went into the house with the defendant, where did you stay?
I stayed in the driveway near my patrol vehicle out in front of the house.
While you were out there, there's the 3 officers inside the house and yourself. Were any other officers arriving or what was going on?
Backyard somewhere. So that was the purpose of it. and again with the defendant to make sure that, we weren't missing her somewhere inside the house.
Okay.
As far as other things, I was in contact with Lieutenant Abel again, asking about the helicopter, what was the status of that, if there was any word on the hospital. And I believe that's the only thing at that point that was going on.
Okay, so the three, excuse me. I think what's going on. Hold on a minute. What happened now? Where's my line? You're taking us through step by step. No. Wait, so the three officers. Wait, hold on. Okay, so but I thought I just said that. No. Okay, so the three officers are inside the house with the defendant. Did they come out of the house at some point? Sorry.
Yes.
I'm messing this up. Okay, what's just the next thing that happened? Taking you through step by step.
What I remember next is going inside the house with the three officers and standing near the front door, near the entryway inside the house. And I asked the officers to give me a rundown of what they had.
Mm-hmm.
And Officer Evers, who was the investigating officer.
Objection, hearsay.
Sustained.
Yeah, don't tell me what he told you. You asked him for a rundown?
I asked him for a rundown and he told me that.
Okay, what happened next then?
Well, based on what they told me, I felt it was necessary to have a detective respond to this incident.
No, wait, you should be at,
Give the
I
couple
asked
line.
if there's
I said,
anything.
Couple?
Yeah, I asked if there's
Oh,
anything.
I asked if there's anything unusual or suspicious about what they had known at that time.
And they gave you some information?
Yes.
Okay, what happened next?
Based on what they told me, I felt it was necessary to have a detective respond to this incident.
In a normal missing persons case, let me ask you this way. Does a detective always respond to a missing persons case right out of the gate? Or is this the kind of call, you call as the unseen person? How does that work?
I would characterize it as being unusual for a detective to respond to a missing persons case. And secondly, that would be my call.
Okay, and so you decided to call in a detective?
Yes.
The circumstances of this particular case, an 8-month pregnant woman missing on Christmas Eve, were the circumstances of that also unusual?
Yes.
Objection, calls for speculation, no foundation.
Overruled. I'll sustain. Call in a detective. Overruled.
Go ahead, you can answer that.
Yes.
So this whole kind of situation is unusual to you?
Yes.
So you decided to call in the detectives. What happened next?
Once I had a conversation with the three officers,
Mm-hmm.
then I had them search a house that was directly north of the Covina residence because it was a vacant residence.
And why did you happen to do that?
Again, there's a possibility that Lacey could have been in that house. I just wanted to make sure that the house had been checked.
All right, so you had them go into that house?
Yes.
And just for reference here, do you recognize this as a diagram of the houses on Covina Avenue?
Yes, I do.
Okay, this one is labeled as the Peterson residence. This is at 523 Covina.
Correct.
Okay, so the house that you said you had them search is 529, the vacant house right next door.
Yes.
Okay, and after they did that, what else did you have happen? What's the next thing that happened?
Once they checked that house, I directed the three officers to then begin to search the park.
And after those three officers left that vacant house, you told them to go back down to the park, start searching. How many officers remained up at the 523 Covina area?
At that point, I was the only uniformed officer, only police officer at the Covina residence.
Had any of the detectives arrived yet?
No.
How long did it take? The detective that arrived was Detective Bercini, is that right?
That's correct.
Do you know how long it took after you made the call for him to arrive at the house?
I would estimate at least 2 hours. Detective Bercini was responding from somewhere up in the Sierra Nevada foothills. So he was some distance away from the city of Modesto.
He was off on a holiday break at some location that's not in Modesto.
That's correct.
Okay, what happened next then? You called in the detective, you're out in the front yard, you're the only officer. Where was Scott Peterson during that time?
He was in front of the house.
While you were there, what was going on? I mean, can you describe the situation at the house?
It was chaotic, emotional. I specifically remember Mrs. Rocha being very upset, understandably, as well as family members and friends. And so I was the source of a lot of emotion and questions and anger, all those types of emotions that the family and the friends were feeling that night.
And since you're the kind of only law enforcement present there at the time, were people coming up to you, for lack of a better term, kind of venting or questioning what was going on?
Yes,
And would you say that was fairly constant?
yes,
Did Scott Peterson, during this time when he was there, when you were just there by yourself at the house, did Scott Peterson ever come up to you and do any of this kind of questioning of you or venting or anything of that nature?
no.
Okay, what happened next?
The helicopter was airborne about 8:30. So from probably 8:30 till approximately 10 o'clock at night, the helicopter was making repeated flights over the park at a low altitude. The scene there changed. It was very quiet. There wasn't a lot of activity because we needed to clear the park so
The
the
infrared.
infrared device in the helicopter could operate properly.
Did you or someone else make some directions to get people out of the park?
Yes,
So the helicopter flew over from 8:30 to 10. Do you remember what time Detective Percini arrived at 523 Covina?
it was right around 10 o'clock, I believe, 5 to 10 p.m. I'm sorry, that was probably not real clear. It was approximately 10 p.m. in the evening.
What happened next then? So the helicopters are kind of flying around. What's the next thing you did?
Once Officer or Detective Burkini arrived, Officer Evers briefed Detective Burkini about the case.
And when you called a detective to kind of start an investigation of this nature, what is your role then? You're the sergeant, but are you in charge of the investigation at this point, or is it kind of the detective? How does that work?
The detective assumes the investigation. I'm there as a resource.
See if he asks you for some resources, can you get somebody or do something? You're available for that purpose.
Correct.
Okay, what happened next?
At that point, because of our, throughout this, I'm in communication with Lieutenant Abel to try to get additional officers in the area.
Oh,
At
at
11 o'clock.
at 11 o'clock, the shift I was
Wait, no,
working.
that's still me, isn't it?
Oh,
yeah,
yes,
sure.
yeah, sorry.
At 11 o'clock, the shift I was working was due to get off work. We held over all those officers and began deploying them into the park.
And did that kind of start a search of the park from the law enforcement perspective?
Yes,
I said perspective. I should have said law enforcement personnel.
correct.
And what happened? Next thing.
That was about 11 p.m. You said. Again, there were officers arriving. I know canine officers specifically, and just trying to direct on where to go. Again, this was the command poster that the central meeting at the second central meeting place. So the officers would come down there and then they would move into the different areas of the park.
So your patrol vehicle was kind of the meeting place out in front of Covina, 523 Covina. Is that right?
Yes,
Okay, and then so people would come to you and say, where do we need to go? And you kind of send them on their way?
yes, but I should add Sergeant Heller was in search of the park. So at approximately 11 o'clock, somewhere around that time, he took over that responsibility.
And that was Sergeant Heller?
Yes,
Do you know if any officers were searching or canvassing the neighborhood?
yes.
So you saw that going on as well?
I didn't see it. I either directed or was advised that they were canvassing or checking the neighborhood.
And what happened next? Next thing.
It was getting very cold. The family wanted to do something. We couldn't let them down to the park, so I think it was brought to their attention. They were coming up to me with lots of ideas what to do. One of those ideas was to start creating posters. So I thought that would be, a perfect thing to do. So several family members left to go to Kinko's copying to make copies for posters. I explained to them that I just didn't think this wasn't a good place to meet because it was very cold and they wouldn't be allowed to go into the house at that point. So I was suggesting maybe they could all kind of gather up in another place. So it was kind of a process where the family and the friends were now leaving.
Okay. And what time did you leave the house that night?
12:30 a.m.
And when you left at 12:30, were you the last person to leave the house?
No, I believe Detective Rocchini and identification technician was still there.
And after you left 523 Covina, did that kind of end your participation in this particular case or this investigation, or did you do other things as well, like the next day or something?
This was my only involvement in this case.
All right, thank you. Your Honor, I don't have any further questions.
Cross-examination by Mark Garagos.
Mr. Garagos.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good morning.
Good morning.
You get a call at exactly what time?
Well, it's not exactly. It's approximately, I believe, 5:58 p.m.
Okay, and you arrive. You go first to 523 Covina.
No.
Where did you go first?
First, I drove to East Loma Park.
Okay, were you in the park? Do you respond to, we have a pointer here. If you want to point to it on People's 36.
Thank you. Generally, right in this area here.
There's some right next to the tennis courts.
There's a parking lot. There's tennis courts and basketball court.
Let me show you this. This might be a better view of the area you responded to.
Just for the record, you're showing him what number, Mr. Garagos?
I'm putting up on the board People's 22, Your Honor.
All right.
It's a little bit, I think it's a little bit more blown up. Did you respond somewhere in here?
Yes, right in this area, right here.
Okay, now, who did you see when you got there? You can return to your seats. Who did you respond to or who was there?
There was, well, in addition to 3 officers.
Well, let's get through. Which 3 were there?
Officer Evers, Officer Spurlock, and Officer Letzinger.
So Evers, Spurlock, Letzinger are there, and what are they doing when you drive up? And by the way, are you by yourself?
Yes.
So you're in your patrol car, a marked patrol car, by yourself. You don't even have a patrol officer with you.
That's correct.
And you see Evers, Spurlock, and Letzinger, and what are they doing?
They're in their cars, beginning to drive out of the park.
Okay, 3 separate cars?
Yes.
Okay. Do you all stop and at that point you meet and have a discussion?
My recollection is no, just with Officer Evers, and that was car to car.
Okay.
We never got out of our cars.
So someplace here in the parking lot, you're driving in, and he's driving out, so it's car to car. You roll down the windows. It's obviously starting to get cold. So you talk through the car windows with Evers?
Yes.
Okay. Do you see people down there searching with flashlights?
No, I don't believe it was even dusk yet, or it wasn't dark yet.
Okay, so at 7 o'clock, roughly, you're there at 7 o'clock.
No, I was there at 6 o'clock.
6 o'clock, roughly at 6 o'clock. It's not even dusk, so you wouldn't even need a flashlight at that point. Is that correct?
That's my recollection. I don't remember seeing anyone with flashlights.
Okay, do you remember seeing anyone out there, civilians searching or doing anything or yelling?
No, what I just saw was a lot of cars parked in the parking lot, and it seemed like a lot of people around on foot.
Okay, and did you see my client, Scott Peterson, down there?
No,
Okay, did you see him anywhere in the park before? You talked to Evers, right? As you talk to Evers, you then move and go on to the Covina address, right?
yes,
Okay, did you see him at any point when you made that trip out of the parking lot and down to Covina?
no,
Okay, when you arrive at Covina, what do you see? What's the first? You park your car where? On the street?
yes,
Okay, do you see the map behind you that's marked as People's 33? How did you approach the house?
from Encina, westbound Encina, and then southbound, or correction, northbound Covina.
Okay, as I'm doing right here.
Yes,
Okay, and then you parked your car on one of those curbs?
I parked directly in front of the residence, closer to the Petersons' residence.
You parked on the wrong side of the street?
Right,
Nobody gave you a ticket?
not that I'm aware of.
When you parked there, what was going on the lawn?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that.
What was going on the lawn of the grass in front of the house?
I can't remember anything going on the lawn.
Okay, so I mean when you drove up to the house, I'll put the picture up. You've seen it ad nauseum. Okay, you drive up to the house. There's nothing unusual going on that you see in that front yard?
Not that I can recall. No.
Okay. Were there people milling around at that point?
When I initially arrived, I don't believe so. Like I said, other family members and friends began to arrive once the 3 officers and myself arrived, or soon thereafter.
Okay, how long would you estimate that you and Evers were down in the parking lot talking?
2 minutes
Okay,
at the most.
but it takes you a couple of minutes to get up here. It's shortly after 6 o'clock and you're in front of Covina.
Well, there was a man who identified himself as a doctor. He'd been jogging in the park, and he had stopped a search, and he asked me if I could give him a ride home because he had a medical emergency he had to get to. So I drove him home from that point. Then I went to the Covina address.
Where was that? Where did you take him?
I have no idea where. It was, I believe it was on Edgebrook Avenue near the entrance of a park, but I can't recall the specific location.
Okay, did he approach you after you had talked to Evers?
Yes.
And as you were leaving the park?
Yes.
Would flag you down?
Yes.
And so you give him a ride that takes another couple of minutes, 5 minutes, or wherever he was going.
Maybe, yeah, I was very close. Maybe a minute.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get a picture of here, I assume something shortly after 6 o'clock, roughly. You parked in front of the Peterson house.
Yes.
And who was there? Evers, Spurlock, Letzinger already there?
Yes.
And when they were also parked in the street itself.
They were parked
They were parked.
on the street legally, as opposed to me, who was illegally parked.
And as you come up, and they're legally parked, are they out of their cars at that point?
My recollection is they're already in the house.
Okay, so you drive up, you see the patrol cars, nobody's in the patrol cars, you park on the other side of the street, you get out, do you go inside the house?
No.
What's the first thing you did when you arrived at the location after you parked your car and you got out?
I believe I called the watch commander, Lieutenant Abel.
Okay, and told him that you were there?
Well, again, just strategizing about contacting hospitals, trying to get the helicopter up.
Okay, you wanted the helicopter up so the helicopter could kind of they talked about it. There's an infrared, so they go through the park and they want to clear the park so that the helicopter, if it could, with the infrared, would show any kind of thorough heat that's being radiated, would be picked it up. It would pick it up from the helicopter. If there's a body down there and it's radiating heat, you'll be able to see better.
That was my understanding.
That was your understanding. And if you got a bunch of people down in that park, it's going to be a problem because obviously it's going to be picking up all the heat from the people who are searching.
Correct.
Okay, now, did you order the helicopter then at that point? A couple, whatever it was, 5 or 10 minutes after 6 o'clock?
Well, I don't think order is the right
Oh,
order.
okay. Did you request while you were strategizing that a helicopter get out there?
Yes.
Okay, so you make this request. Did you tell them, did they tell you that they're going to do that? I mean, what believed?
No, I didn't know. I didn't even know that they had an infrared device on the helicopter.
Okay, that at some point, did you or were you aware that somebody issued an order to have the park evacuated?
Yes.
And at that time, what was that? When was that?
I would estimate probably around 8 to 8:30 p.m.
Okay, so you arrive, you're in your patrol car, you don't see Evers, you don't see Spurlock, you don't see Letzinger. They're inside the house, you assume. You, if I got it right, you're on your radio, you're strategizing about getting the helicopter at that point, correct?
Correct.
And then at that point, did you go onto the premises?
Yeah, yes, I was in the driveway area.
Okay, as you're in the driveway area, did you do anything to go around or secure the perimeter of the house itself?
No,
Did you see anybody else do that?
no,
Did you go, you check the pool, the jacuzzi in the backyard, or the cars, or the inside of the house yourself?
no,
Did you kind of basically just kind of man the front yard and make sure nobody else goes inside the house? Let me back it
No
up
response.
because it will make more sense. Did you at some point after you got out of your car and you had this conversation strategizing about what you was going to do, did you contact with Evers, Letzinger, or Spurlock?
yes.
And when, what was the next thing you did after that, after you made that phone call? Who did you talk to?
Again, it was a group discussion amongst all three of us.
Now, when you say again, if I understand correctly, down in the park, it was just you and Evans, is that correct?
Right. I was just referring to my earlier testimony.
Okay, so your first discussion with Evers, your second discussion up at the house is with Spurlock, Letzinger, and Evers, the four of you together?
Yes.
And where did that take place, that discussion?
Inside the house near the front door.
Okay, and was that the first thing you did at the house, is have this group discussion, if you will?
Yes.
Did you at any point prior to that group discussion, had you encountered Scott Peterson yet?
At that point, I didn't know who Scott Peterson was.
Okay, so as far as you know, you had not seen him down in the park, you had not seen him at the house.
That's correct.
You have this group discussion, which takes approximately how long?
Very brief, less than 5 minutes.
Okay, what did you do right after that?
That's when I called Lieutenant Abel, explained that I wanted a detective to respond.
Okay, so the reason that you wanted a detective to respond, I think the prosecutor was asking you, what was that unusual? That was based upon the discussion that you had with Evers, Letzinger, and Spurlock, correct?
Yes.
Okay, and based upon that discussion, you called and you asked for, you have some kind of, in Modesto, I guess it's a rotating detective basis or a on-call basis, is that correct?
Do you want me to tell you the process of what I went through?
Well, is that going to take a long time? Can I kind of shortcut it?
The lieutenant, Kirk, I called the supervisor of the Crimes Against Persons unit, who in turn told me to call Detective Brocchini. He gave me his phone number, and I called Detective Brocchini.
And when you talked to Detective Brocchini, did you tell him or convey to him, I'm not asking for what's hearsay, the discussion you had with Evers, Spurlock, and Letzinger?
Yes.
Okay, and that discussion at that point, you didn't have any independent knowledge of anything about Scott Peterson because you didn't know who Scott Peterson was, correct?
No response.
Other than that, you were told by Spurlock, Evans, Evers, and Letzinger, correct?
Well, I'm thinking when I made the phone call at that point, did I know who Scott Peterson was? That's why I had to reflect for a minute. And I can't say at that point I knew who Scott Peterson was.
Okay, so you get on the phone, you talk to, it's not Captain Kirk, it's Lieutenant Kirk, right?
Lieutenant Abel.
Lieutenant Abel. And after Abel gives you Broccini's number, you call Broccini, you fill him in. Did you tell him roughly the basics of whatever Spurlock and Letzinger had told you?
Yes.
And so, okay, so whatever these three and you discussed, then that's conveyed in essence to Broccini, who's 2 hours away or an hour and a half away, somewhere in the Sierra Nevadas, correct?
Correct.
And at that point, were you told to do certain things by Detective Broccini?
No.
Did you, after you got, how long was that discussion you had with Broccini?
Less than 5 minutes.
Approximately the same amount of time as your discussion with Evers, Spurlock, and Letzinger.
Yes.
Okay, so you get off the phone with him at that point. Where'd you go?
To the front of the house.
And at that point, are you allowing people to go in and out of the house?
No.
Okay, is it a fair statement that from the time you arrived, 6:05, 6:10, whatever it was, and that you already saw Evers, Spurlock, and Letzinger there, that you saw no other civilians go in and out of that house?
No, I can't say that for certainty, no.
Well, while you were there, did you see anybody else go inside that house that wasn't either a, what do you call them, evidence tech or forensic tech or a law enforcement type?
I believe I saw the defendant go into the house with one of the officers.
Okay, and do you remember which officer was that?
That was Officer Evans.
And do you remember what time that was?
No.
Okay, do you remember if it was after you had already called Broccini and requested that he be brought in?
Mm-hmm, yes.
Okay, and do you remember how long after it was when you called the detective?
No, other than that, it had to be sometime probably before the helicopter launched.
Mr. Garagos, let me interrupt. It's just about noontime. I want to admonish the jury. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you are not to discuss this case or form or express any opinions about this case. You're not to listen to, read, or watch any media reports of this trial or discuss it with any representatives of the media or their agents. We'll take the noon recess. We'll reconvene at 1:30, okay? And Sergeant, you're ordered back at 1:30. I don't know how much longer you're going to be. All right. This is People versus Peterson. Let the record show the defendant is present with counsel and the jury is in the jury box along with the alternates. And where is the sergeant?
The sergeant is outside. Cross-examine an empty chair?
Okay, we have Detective Durfeld and Mr. Garagos. Do you remember where you left off? Want to read back the last question and answer? Or do you know where you left off?
No, I remember.
Okay.
After you recalled Abel and then Broccini, at this point it was approximately 6:15.
No, because I didn't arrive at the Covina address until approximately 6:20.
You didn't arrive there until 6:20, you think? Your best estimate?
Yes.
Is that you were at Covina at 6:20?
Yes, approximately.
So then you do, you have the strategy sessions, as you call it. You make 2 calls, and then what do you do?
Then I returned to the front of the home to the driveway area.
Okay, did you talk to a Sergeant Alan Carter?
Yes.
Okay. When did you do that in this timeline?
Yeah, he was the sergeant I was referring to, who's a supervisor of crimes against persons, who gave me the telephone number of Detective Broccini.
Okay. Now he's got a report. Have you reviewed any of the reports in connection with this case?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to show you one that's Bates stamped 21635, Sergeant Alan Carter, May 14th.
I haven't read that.
Read the first sentence, if you will.
On Tuesday,
To yourself.
To yourself, I'm sorry.
okay.
Okay, does that refresh your recollection about the time, what time you called
Yes.
Carter? So would it have been closer to 6:30 that you actually called him?
Right. I arrived on scene at approximately 6:20 and 10 minutes later made the phone call.
All right. Now, when you called him, did you call him that, did you tell him that Scott Peterson was currently not at the house at 6:30 but was out walking the neighborhood looking for his wife?
I can't remember that.
Same page. Does that refresh your recollection?
Again, I don't recall telling Sergeant Carter that.
Okay, did you tell Sergeant Carter that Scott had called numerous family members prior to the police being called and that they were now at the residence?
I can't recall specifically telling him that.
Okay, did Carter tell you something that caused you to go get Scott? Did he tell you to go get Scott, or did you,
No.
as you, ask you to read this silently to yourself? Does that refresh your recollection?
Again, my only recollection of my conversation with Sergeant Carter is just to explain that we had a missing person case and I wanted a detective out there. And who should we call out?
Okay, now did you tell Carter what I just showed you was a lot more information than that? You don't remember that? Giving that information to Carter?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, then I'm going to ask you. I'm going to ask you to read silently to yourself. Now, do you remember any of that information that's in Carter's report conveying that to him?
No, sir. No, sir.
Okay, now did you end up, did you call? Did you end up calling him back, Carter?
I don't remember calling him. I just remember the one telephone call.
All right, let me show you another portion of this report where Carter indicates that at 7 o'clock you called him back. Does that refresh your recollection?
No.
Okay, and do you remember you don't have any recollection of the second phone call, is that correct?
I'm sorry, I don't.
Okay, now did you, when you went back inside the house, you were in the front lawn, that would have been after you talked to Carter, after you talked to Braccini, and obviously the three other officers, correct?
Yes.
You leave the other three officers inside the house, you went out to the front yard.
No, I believe they were already outside the house too.
Okay, so the four of you were out front, family members, they were coming up, they were asking questions, getting angry, hysterical. Is that a fair approximation of what was going on?
Yes.
All right, okay. And then you said you're trying to keep them off the, or out of the house at that point, correct?
Yeah. No. No, I don't. There was no urgency or no one was wanting to go in the house.
Didn't they want to go in the house to get pictures? Weren't they requesting to get pictures? You talked about this poster they wanted to make. They wanted to make up a poster. Wasn't one of the things that people were looking for were pictures of Lacey so they could distribute those?
My recollection of that was much later in the night, closer to after the helicopter had ended its search, more like around 10 o'clock in the evening.
Okay, now as you came back out, the family members were doing this and that. What's the first time you saw Scott?
The first time I saw the defendant was outside in the driveway area.
At approximately what time?
I'm estimating sometime after 6:30
Okay.
p.m.
And at that point, did you tell him to stay at the house?
I had no conversation with him.
At all that evening?
That's correct.
Okay, now at any point, did you see him in the company of any other officers?
No.
When he came back to the house, where did you see him? Just in the driveway area?
Again, My recollection is I saw him in the driveway at the front of the house. I didn't see him approach. My recollection is I saw him at the house.
Okay, in the front of the house?
In the front of the house.
Did you see him go into the house with Evers or one of the other officers?
My recollection is there was something about a telephone. There was a telephone, it was ringing and or something along that effect. And Officer Evers escorted him inside the house.
Okay. Now, at some point, you said that you had ordered this helicopter, correct? Or required? You didn't order it. You requested that somebody put up a helicopter.
Yes.
Now, after that, did you do something to have the park cleared?
I asked the 3 officers to go down and clear the park because Sergeant Wend had relayed to us that everyone had to be out of the park because they were going to use the floor.
Okay, when did Sergeant Wen do that? What time was that?
I know he went airborne, or the helicopter went airborne, approximately 8:30, so approximately 8 to 8:15, somewhere in that time frame.
Where were you between 6:30 and 8 o'clock or 8:15?
The entire time, I never left the front of the house.
Oh, okay. While you were in the front of the house, did you see Scott Peterson come and go?
I never saw him leave, no.
Did you see him standing there?
Yes,
The whole time. Did you see him talking to people?
no,
Did you see him talk? You already indicated you saw him with Evers, Officer Evers, correct?
no.
Answer the phone. Remember that incident with the phone?
Oh, yeah, when he escorted him back in the house, yes.
Okay, and how long were they inside together?
Less than a couple of minutes, I would imagine.
And the time while you were waiting out in the front, 6 to 8:15, where was Evers? Or let's make it 6:30 to 8:15. Where was Evers, Spurlock, and the other officer?
Again, they were down in the park.
They were down in the park.
Yeah, searching in the park.
And so you were the only officer, roughly, in between the time of 6:30, 8:15, that was man in the house?
Yes, between 6:30 and maybe 7 until 10 o'clock p.m.
So 10 o'clock p.m., it's a fair statement that the only officer that was at the house was you.
No. I mean that there might have been a point. I know once the helicopter started searching, I believe one of those 3 officers, either Evers, Letzinger, or Spurlock, probably was at the home. Probably all 3 of them at one point. Once the park had been cleared and the helicopter was searching for an hour and a half, I know what those 3 officers, I know that those 3 officers were back at the house, in front of the house. Now, I don't know how long they were there.
And that would have been sometime after 8:30?
Approximately, it could have been 8 o'clock, I'm not sure.
Okay, and the first time you saw Scott Peterson on the driveway was when you came back out of the house and had made those phone calls.
Sometime after that, yes, sir.
And would that have been shortly after that he came outside?
Sometime after I came outside,
Okay, before 7 o'clock?
yes.
May I have just one moment? Thank you, I have no further questions.
Redirect examination by Rick DeStasso.
Any direct examination, Mr. DeStasso?
Yes, Your Honor. Sergeant Durfeld, before December 24th of 2002, did you know Scott Peterson?
No,
Did you even know he existed?
no.
Nothing further.
Recross examination of Mark Garagos.
Any other, Mr. Garagos, any other questions on that?
Did you, on that scintillating redirect? No. But did I missed one thing I wanted to ask. Sergeant, did you, direct Letzinger at some point that evening, to wait for the ID techs to arrive to photograph the house?
Yes,
And did you point out areas where Puccini had asked you to have photographs taken?
no,
No?
no.
Do you recall seeing this report? I'm referring to 3309.
Yes,
Okay, now did you run into somebody else, or did somebody arrive by the name of Doug Lovell that evening?
yes.
And did Doug Lovell, who do you know is Doug Lovell to be?
He's a department identification technician.
And did you relieve Letzinger from watching the house at some point?
That's not my recollection. And again, I know in Officer Letzinger's report, it states that I relieved him of that responsibility.
I don't have to show you.
No,
In his report, he says you relieved him from watching the house. That's not what you remember, correct?
no.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Second redirect examination by Rick DeStasso.
Mr. DeStasso, any questions in this new area?
Hold on 1 second, Your Honor.
Sure.
Did Sergeant Duerfeld, do you have a recollection of who relieved Letzinger from his duties?
No, I remember I was there at the house entirely until ID technician Doug Lovell and Detective Cheney were at the home. At that point, I remember leaving the home when those two people were at the home. So as far as someone in charge of the home, I would defer that. But Detective Cheney now was the scene manager of that home.
Nothing further.
Second recross examination by Mark Garagos.
Mr. Garagos, any questions?
Just so I understand, your understanding what happened that evening is that once Percini showed up, and that the house was under his auspices at that point in whatever pecking order you have.
Yeah, it's at that point it becomes his investigation. Although I'm a supervisor, I will provide him the resources. It's his investigation, his expertise.
And you're not at that point doing anything other than supplying, as you say, resources or trying to assist him. He's the one who's in charge of the investigation at that point when he arrives. And I think you said 5 to 10, correct?
Correct.
Thank you. No further questions.
May this witness be excused?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Now let's see. Next witness is who's the next one? Price is right. Is Craig Wend, Modesto PD. Okay. Chat.
Isn't this the one I already did?
No, this is Wend.
Who?
Wend, Officer Wend. Hold on,
I think you sent the same one twice.
No, I didn't give it to you yet.
Oh, that would be why.
I'm trying to get there. I'm not that fast yet. Okay. All right. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Craig Wend, direct examination by Rick DeStasso.
Okay. Sergeant Wend, you're employed by the Modesto Police Department?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How long have you been a sworn peace officer of the state of California?
Approximately 24 years.
What's your current duty assignment?
I'm currently a sergeant assigned to patrol.
On December 24th, 2002, were you on duty that day?
Yes, I was.
And did you get a call to assist Sergeant Duerfeld in an investigation at 523 Covina?
No.
Okay. Did you get a call to go out to the airfield and get a helicopter and fly the park?
Yes.
Okay. Tell me. Let's just go through what happened. You were there when you got the call.
I got off at 8 o'clock that night, and I was called into the watch commander's office, and he told me that.
Objection. Hearsay.
Well, it's to explain his subsequent conduct, not being offered for the truth.
That's right. Go ahead.
And I was assigned to ride in the helicopter to search the park for the missing person.
Okay.
You weren't the pilot.
No, sir, just an observer.
You rode along.
Yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
So go ahead. Tell me what happened. You went out to the airfield.
Yeah, we went out to the airfield. We got in the air approximately 8:30. One of the co-pilot was an officer, Deputy Pettit, and I don't remember who the pilot was, but we took off from the airfield, got over Dry Creek, and flew from approximately Yosemite Boulevard. We're to the south, or correction, to the west, and then all the way up to the east. I know it's probably hard to understand, but past the furthest city limit boundary of Claus Road, and then even approximately or a mile or so east from that.
Okay. There's a diagram on the board. People's 36 here, and can you take a look at it?
Sure.
And if you take a look here, just to orient you, here's Covina, here's the tennis courts, here's Dry Creek. Is that looking familiar to you?
I'm sorry. Yes.
Okay, and down here, would that be Yosemite Boulevard?
Yes.
You can write on the picture. Just take this black pen. You don't have to be neat or anything. Just write Yosemite so we know what you're talking about, where you're talking about.
Sure.
Right in there, okay? And so you've got in the helicopter, and was the helicopter equipped with an infrared device?
A handheld floor, yes.
I'm sorry. Oh no.
I'm sorry. A handheld what? You want to spell it, Sergeant?
It's
I know what it is, but I thought maybe the court reporter would need it.
an acronym for a long word.
Okay, all right. Do you remember what what would it be?
FLIR, forward looking infrared something.
Put SIC.
Okay. And Sergeant Wen, what that does is, just in a nutshell, that it looks for heat sources, correct?
Yes.
So you were in the helicopter. You fly as far as southeast, I guess, as Yosemite Boulevard.
Well, we flew a little farther, but the Dry Creek it's almost like the end of it,
Uh-huh.
Yosemite Boulevard. It's a little bit further to the south, but it's really overgrown and stuff. So for the most part, we flew just a little bit southwestish of Yosemite Boulevard, and then we followed the creek.
All right, and so you flew, you rode in the helicopter with the infrared device all the way along the creek.
Yes.
And how do you know how far the distance is from one end of, the entire Dry Creek Park area to the other?
It's several miles, and I know that because of the distances between the major streets. And also the creek really curves back and forth, and it goes quite a bit farther to the east than this map indicates.
Okay, can you just put a thing on this diagram, just put a thing that says, just put flew further east or something. Don't step on the juror here.
That's okay.
Just so they know where you went, okay? How long, you can go ahead. Have a seat now. How long do you think that you were in the air?
Probably around an hour and 15 minutes or so, an hour and 20 minutes.
Did you make more than one pass over that park?
Yes.
So you kind of flew up and down, up one direction, then turned around, came back down the other direction?
Well, of course, it's at night, okay? So we're using the spotlight. And as you can see, kind of on the map, some areas are relatively narrow, where there's mostly just bank and water. And then as you can see, some places where it spreads out, where the parks are at, and the bike riding trails and stuff. Those would take a lot longer to look. So we hovered on places we couldn't see, got down to the left, got down to the right, and went back and forth numerous times.
And you were making kind of low-level passes along the park.
Whatever low is, seemed to be, a couple 100 feet maybe.
And it was yourself and the two pilots?
Yes.
And was everybody kind of just, looking, searching for Lacey Peterson? Is that what you were doing?
We were looking for this missing person, Lacey Peterson, yes.
After you finished these passes over the park, of course, you were not successful in finding Lacey Peterson.
That's correct.
And at that point, did you return to the airfield?
Yes.
And did you have any other involvement that night with this investigation?
No.
Thank you. Nothing further.
Cross-examination by Mark Garrigus.
Mr. Garrigus.
Sergeant, I've got a printout here. Looks like a computer printout with your name on it. Is that your badge number?
That's my assigned. They call it my M number. Well, an M number.
Because it starts with an M?
Right.
Okay. I'm gonna mark this as defense next in order, which I think is K.
Want it next in order, K? What is it, Mr. Garagos?
It's a one-page computer printout of M numbers.
M numbers.
M as in Mary. What's the bait stamp, please? Doesn't have it on here. It shows a 1954 in a location airport and then an M number. What meaning does that have to you?
At 1954, the dispatcher, which is this Z number, assisted me to the airport, and me, being me, my M number.
Okay, 1954 being 6 minutes of 8 before 8 o'clock.
Yes.
Okay, and so what time did you arrive at the airport?
It was probably about 10 or 15 minutes after that.
Okay, and do I understand correctly, you're with somebody named Roy Pettit?
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And an officer, Daniel Gonzalez.
No, sir.
Do you know who Gonzalez?
Yes, I do know him.
Where was he? Was he directed somewhere else?
Yeah, it just shows it as an assist. And I don't know what he did, though.
Okay, now what time you went to the airport? What time did you get to did you actually go up? Looks here like it says en route, then on scene. Does that correspond to when you actually got there, 8:15 on scene?
You have to look to these numbers here, too. These designate different units. And at that time, I was X33. So X33, you'll notice there's no Z number here by this miscellaneous MX33. That's me providing information to the dispatcher. I told her that would be me. That we would be making flyovers to assess the situation.
So is it a fair statement that at 8:15 you were in the air?
No, sir.
Okay, what time were you in the air?
Approximately 8:30, 8:35 or so.
Okay, is that reflected anywhere on here?
Right, there's the closest that you're going to get to actually when we were getting close, and that's 20 after.
20 after 8 o'clock?
Yes, sir. And this supplement, again, is by the dispatcher. The dispatcher putting this information that Air 101 will be taking flight in a moment.
Okay.
And that happened approximately 15 minutes after that.
Okay, so sometime after 8:21, within 15 minutes, you're doing a flyover of this area. Is that correct?
Yes.
That I'm pointing out on the People's 36.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now when you did that and you were up there with Pettit, and what was the other officer's name, the pilot's name? You don't remember?
I don't remember.
Okay. Now you said there was a spotlight. Who was operating the spotlight?
The co-pilot was operating it at times. I operated it at times. We traded off, to get different looks and look in different places.
Okay, was it your understanding that by the time you got up, which would have been, as you said, about 15 minutes of 8:21. So at sometime before 8:35, 8:36, you're over the park. Is that correct?
Approximately then, yes.
Okay, is it your understanding that by that time the park had been cleared?
I didn't know that. I knew that we had other units doing other things. There was plenty going on. I know that I just had this job to do, and we went up and did it.
Okay, when you say this job, you had this portable FLIR device, correct?
Yes, we did.
And that was to see if you could sense heat from obviously people who were in the park, correct?
Yes.
Okay, were you getting any readings off of this FLIR device?
No.
Did that lead you to believe that the park had been cleared out?
I have to correct myself. We weren't getting any readings that would indicate were heat sources coming from people. There were heat sources that were reading on the FLIR. It was working, but those were like lights and things that were producing heat. Like the path was a darker or a lighter color because it held more heat than the surrounding dirt. We were getting readings. I didn't see any human readings.
Right, you were getting inanimate objects. You weren't getting anything that was a body.
Correct.
Or a person, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now how long did you, if you went up there about 8:36, how long would you say you were covering the park?
Like I said earlier, about an hour and 15 minutes probably.
Okay, when did you receive, when you said you flew further east and over on this end on People's 36, how much farther did you go in that direction?
Well, like I said, we went past Kloss Road, where the creek just keeps winding up through some orchards and stuff. And I'd have to say at least a mile past Kloss Road, if not even further.
Okay, at the same time, you're in contact with somebody on the ground?
Well, I had a radio communications with our dispatcher. However, it was pretty rough in the helicopter, especially with, all the noise and stuff.
Okay, then when you went up, did you have a description at the point, or were you looking at a specific area that they directed you to do a grid search? Were you given any directions?
Our instructions were to search the dry creek area, and it was pretty obvious that meant the surrounding parks within that dry creek area. We weren't directed to search like up into the neighborhoods or anything. Our specific task was to search that dry creek.
This place is called Dry Creek. Is there any water in this creek?
Yes, there is. Not a lot. It's a small.
But there is water, though. How much water would you say is there?
On that day, I would say that it was maybe anywhere from 2-3 feet deep in some of the probably deeper spots, and 8 or 10, 12 feet wide.
Okay.
In some places, of course, it varied, but that would be maybe an average.
Which direction did the creek flow?
The creek flows to the west, southwest.
Okay, and the total area you were not directed, as you indicated, I think, if I understood you correctly, to search any of the neighborhoods. Is that correct?
Right.
On that day?
Well, they weren't telling us not to search the neighborhoods.
Okay.
They told us to search the Dry Creek area and the surrounding parks in there.
Okay.
That's what we were told.
Okay, so ultimately, you did not that evening take that helicopter or have the pilots fly over any of the residential neighborhoods?
Not specifically, no.
Not specifically. Now, you do that on occasion, isn't that correct?
Could you be a little more specific?
Do you have let me give you an example. On the 26th, which would have been 2 days later, there was a report of a burglary on 516 Covina. Do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
All right, and you responded to conduct an investigation of the burglary. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
At what time did you get there for that burglary?
It was approximately 4:45, maybe a little later than that. 10 to 5 maybe, best I can remember.
It was approximately 4:45, maybe a little late. Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Can you tell me, was as best as you can remember, 516 Covina You already heard testimony is directly across the street from the Petersons at 523. You're aware of that?
Yes,
Okay, now you're in charge or placed in charge of this investigation and of that burglary.
I'll have to clear that up a little bit too. At the time of this incident, I was a patrol officer. I was not a sergeant.
At the time, back in December of 2002?
Yes,
Okay, so in December of 2002, you had a couple less stripes than you're wearing right now.
a lot less.
Okay, so after this 24th incident, when you're up in the helicopter, as you indicated, you're on patrol, you had left patrol, you go up, you're up there until 8:36, until what, 10 o'clock roughly?
A little bit before 10 o'clock, yes.
A little bit before 10 o'clock, and then you shut down, the helicopter search is shut down.
Yes,
You land and you go back to the airport and you're off duty, is that correct?
that's correct.
Okay, now moving forward to the 26th, you get a call, there's a burglary because people had just returned home, having been gone since the morning of the 24th. Is that your understanding?
Yes,
And that would have been the Medinas.
yes.
Okay, now you arrived there. Who did you speak to?
Both Mr. and Mrs. Medina were there.
Okay, and who kind of took charge of filing the report? Was it Mr. or Mrs. Medina?
I spoke mostly to Mr. Medina.
Now, when you took the report, you found signs of a forced entry at the house, didn't you?
Yes, I did.
You found signs of a safe, a large safe that had been removed. Somebody had indicated to you, you saw the location where it looked like a safe had been, correct?
I had every reason to believe a safe had been removed. There was a dolly out front. They claimed that it was there when they left, and it wasn't, so
They claimed that the safe was there when they left. The safe was no longer in the location. I assume you saw some imprints in the floor from where the safe had been.
that's correct.
Okay, and you see a dolly in the front yard, correct?
That's right.
Okay, and where in the front yard was the dolly?
It was on the front grass.
Kind of hard to miss.
Yeah,
Okay, at that point, when you arrived on the 26th, the street had already been blocked off because of the disappearance of Lacey Peterson. Isn't that correct? When I say that street, I'm just going to point you here, if I could, to People 33, which is the map of the Covina location. Had it blocked off here where I'm pointing to where Edgebrook is, just south of what's called Pierre Park.
in all honesty, I don't remember the street being blocked off.
Do you remember if I told you that Mrs. Medina said that when she came home she had to show officers their identification in order to get into that block? Would that refresh your recollection as to whether or not the police had cordoned off the area, the block?
No, nope.
Okay. What was the condition of the street on December 26th when you arrived home before 5 o'clock?
With regard to traffic or vehicles.
Traffic, whether there were satellite trucks, whether there were police cars, whether there were people there.
I don't remember any media being there specifically. I remember some people walking around, but I was able to just drive up to the front yard of the Medina residence and got out and took the burglary report.
Were you in a marked patrol car?
Yes, I was. Yes, sir.
Okay, do you generally get to drive wherever you want when you're in a marked patrol car?
Within reason.
Okay, now, when you drove up and you're on which side of the street did you park on, by the way?
In front of their house. So it would have been the right-hand side of the street
Okay,
if you're facing to the north.
okay, and when you took the burglary report, how far off the street would you say the dolly was?
It was kind of closer to the front porch than the middle of the yard. If you divided the yard in thirds, it would have been in the third closest to the front porch.
And that setback from the street to the house is approximately 30 feet.
That sounds reasonable.
Okay, I mean, if I were to tell you that from where you're sitting to the pole right now is 40 feet, it's certainly a lot closer than that, isn't it?
It's probably about 40 feet then.
And so 25 feet at most off the street is that dolly.
If you throw out the at most part, approximately would be appropriate to use.
Approximately 25 feet.
Yes, sir.
Okay, now, Nobody had, as far as you know, during your investigation, nobody had phoned in a burglary report prior to the Medinas getting home, correct?
Are you talking about anybody else in the neighborhood or anything?
Yeah, right. Was that, as far as your investigation revealed, the first person to make a complaint about a burglary in the house was the Medinas? Well, actually, Your Honor, I object. Are we talking about at the Medina's house? About the Medina's burglary? Yes.
I think that's in the question.
All right.
So your question is, are the Medinas the only ones that reported a burglary to me?
At their residence.
At their residence.
At the residence.
They actually, if I'm understanding your question right, they actually reported this burglary to 2 policemen that were there.
Yeah, right. Nobody else reported this burglary. Nobody else came by, said, hey, I saw a safe in front of that house. I saw a dolly in the front of that house prior to the Medinas making a report, correct?
Not that I know of.
Okay, what else did your investigation entail as far as this burglary?
Well, it was pretty typical. It was a pretty typical door kick, grab what you can and take off with it. I mean, there was only one room that was really ransacked, and that was the master bedroom. And it wasn't ransacked a lot. Some things were taken off the top shelf in the bedroom, in the bathroom. In the master bedroom, a drawer had been opened, and a jewelry box had been laid out.
So, was there a lot of jewelry that was left in the location?
There was some. This lady had a lot of jewelry. Some of it was costume, I would assume, and some was not.
Was the safe described to you, a weight of this safe or the size?
Yes.
And what was that?
If I could refer to my report, I'll give you the dimension that they told me.
Yes. Actually, Your Honor, I'm going to object at hearsay at this point. He's looking at the report to refresh his recollection.
As regards the safe,
Right, but he didn't see the safe. I have no problem with him testifying.
he's going. This is his report. It's an official document, results of an investigation. Are you objecting to that?
Okay, that's fine.
They told me that it was approximately 3 feet tall by 2.5 feet wide by 2.5 feet deep.
Okay, did that safe ever recovered to the best of your knowledge?
I don't know. It may have been late. May have been through later investigation, but I don't know for sure.
Okay, how much of the investigation did you actually handle?
Only really the initial taking and the documentation of the forced entry into the residence and the interviewing of the victim. I actually left them a property page to fill out because there were numerous items that were stolen, and it was just a general burglary report.
Okay, is the report that I'm holding right now, is the burglary report you're referring to?
That's a copy of it, yes.
Okay, now it looks like on the last page of that, you indicated that you did not contact the neighbors in regard to this incident. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and the place of entry on the house is 516. That's the address of the Medinas.
Yes.
And the house is there. Was the house entered from the side? I've got my going point to point. Can you describe exactly where the point of entry was?
Yes.
That you saw.
I mean, as detailed as this map will let me.
Right.
The point of entry is on the south side. There's a gate. If this is the whole property, then I have to assume the house sits on this property, and it would be on the south side, inside of the gate. There's a side door.
Okay, side door. The driveway, as you remember, runs on the side of this house, or the gate is on the side of the house.
Yes, right.
Okay, now you go straight out from that area, you're between where Karen's service is and the Peterson's house. Is that your understanding?
I don't know who lived at 517.
You know where the Peterson residence is?
Yes, I know where it's at.
And the house directly next door, which is 517, if I tell you that's Karen Service's house and you assume that I'm telling the truth on that, is the location of the gate, does it face right out toward the Peterson's house and the Service house?
I don't think that it can face both of them because the gate's only probably, a few feet wide, and that's actually 2 lots. So it's going to face out probably more towards 517 than the Peterson house.
Okay, now the report that Mr. Medina made to you and that your hand wrote, who did you forward that to?
I turned it into records, and obviously investigations would get a copy, and just the normal procedures, as you turn in reports.
Who became the detective assigned to that?
I don't know.
Did nobody ever follow up with you once who wrote that report? I assume you wrote it that evening, right?
I wrote it in that afternoon. Yes, that evening.
I mean, you got there around 5 o'clock, right?
A little before 5, yes.
Okay, and you wrote it fairly soon after that.
Yes.
And did somebody follow up with you after that as to any of your observation of things that you had seen, or was that pretty much the end of your involvement in the investigation?
That was about the end of my involvement.
Okay, that's what I wanted to get at. Basically, you came out, you took a report, you left with either Rudy or Susan the property form, and you went on your way.
Well, yeah, I turned in the report, and yeah.
Okay, now as we described to you, the gate that you're referring to, where it looked like the point of entry for the Medina house, the gate was open, wasn't it? Standing open is how they reported seeing when they got home. They said the gate had been standing open, the small gate.
They reported that the gate was open.
Okay, now they said that there was a number of tools and things that were out of place, correct?
Right.
Okay, and then they said they had gone in, they discovered this by going in through the open gate and seeing if the backyard there had been, an entry had been made, correct?
They...
I mean the Medinas.
Right.
Okay, and you confirmed that by saying there had been a forced entry of some kind
To the house.
to the house.
Right.
Okay, when we say a forced entry, we're talking about what kind of door, first of all, if you could describe it.
It was a wood door that had some glass in it.
Panes of glass inside the door?
Best as I can remember, yes.
Okay, but the clue that it was a forced entry... I'm
but
sorry.
The clue that it was a forced entry was the boot print by the lock and the door standing open.
That's pretty good. You don't have to be Sherlock Holmes, okay, to figure out somebody used their shoe to kick open a door.
That was the clue.
Okay, now you saw that, and you described it in your report as a muddy footprint. Is that correct? I'll show you. I'm looking at my Bates number stamps are different from yours, so...
Yeah, I think that's what I said, yeah.
Is that you saw a muddy footprint on the white painted door, correct?
Right.
Okay, and now the footprint, this muddy footprint, did it look to be fresh, dry dirt? What did it look like to you?
Don't confuse muddy with like when you step in a mud puddle and put it didn't really like flake off any I didn't really flake off any to see how moist it actually was. But it, like I said, time would have been hard at the time. It would have been hard for me to tell if it would have been right then or a day later. It was hard to tell.
Day earlier?
I couldn't tell.
Right. Now it was reported to you that there had been a chair that had been placed against the front door as well, correct? And that had been removed.
Yes.
Okay, and that presumed the front door was also now, when you checked it, unlocked, correct?
That's right.
Okay, and it was reported to you by the Medinas at least that when they left the house on the 24th, they had locked the house up, correct?
That's right.
Okay, not only locked it up, but had placed the chair against the door itself, correct?
Right.
And as an additional safety precaution,
Right. He wedged his chair up against the doorknob on his front door.
Okay, now in the bedroom there was a closet sliding door that had been opened, correct?
That's what they said, yes.
And items that had been taken off the shelf and placed on the bed.
Right.
Okay, and the safe was missing, and there were several drawers that had been opened and a jewelry box there that had been on the counter, which, according to them at least, they had been in a drawer prior to that.
Right.
And they did tell you about the cash that was missing numerous places, and numerous pieces of jewelry, and a .38 caliber pistol that was in the safe.
Right.
Okay, and but basically they were either too shook up or they hadn't had enough time to itemize everything that had been lost. Isn't that correct? Objection. That's argumentative. I don't believe it is. I'm asking for their demeanor.
Well,
You left them a property report so they could do that, correct?
rephrase it.
You skipped a bunch.
Oh boy, hold on.
Well,
I will make it.
rephrase it.
Did they itemize everything that had been stolen for you that evening or afternoon?
No.
You left them a property report so they could do that, correct?
Right. Their loss was extensive. And for them to sit down and figure it out, go through the things that were still at home, they told me the things that had not have been removed. They needed some time to sit down and figure out.
Okay. Now, there's a converted garage that was not ransacked, correct?
That's right.
And it's looking like that converted garage did not even have, that nobody had even entered it, correct?
It didn't appear to be that way to me, no.
And there were TVs, a VCR, and a vase containing lots of cash in this converted garage, and that didn't appear to be entered at all, correct?
No, that was in the living room of the house.
Okay, the converted garage is right next door to that, isn't it?
Right.
Okay, and that did not appear to be entered, right?
Right.
And there were valuable items in there, right?
Yes.
Thank you. I have no further questions of this witness.
Redirect examination of Rick DeStasso.
Mr. DeStasso, anything else?
Yes, Your Honor. Sergeant Wendt, when they were telling you about this burglary report, the way you wrote it was the only room ransacked. And then you put parentheses, slightly, was the master bedroom. Can you explain what that meant?
Sure. This ransacked in my when I've seen them ransacked, drawers are pulled out and clothes are pulled out, looking for guns or money or jewelry that are hidden and stuff. This room was not. It was not ransacked to me when I wrote slightly. Meant that some things were taken and moved and removed and looked through, okay? Technically ransacked, but not torn up. The whole room wasn't torn up. And that appeared to be the only room that had been gone through.
And I think they said that they told you that in some of the other rooms there was a vase that contained, I think, $800 in cash that was still there, as well as TVs, VCRs that were not taken.
That's right.
And I think finally, it looks like the keys to their Mercedes automobile was hanging in the kitchen and the car remained in the driveway.
That's right.
So the car hadn't been taken either.
That's right.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Mr. Garagos, anything about the Mercedes or anything? Anything about the cars or Mercedes? Anything like that? Cash? No questions. All right, Sergeant. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, let's see. What do we have after that? Okay, we had a problem with Officer Wendt. We have an animated aerial park presentation. There's a small thing over here that we have to go through. It's very short, but there was a problem with the witness. I'll send it to Sharon. Okay. Dr.
You guys
Stasso,
ready?
yeah, not to use the park presentation.
Animated aerial park presentation. Discussion of animated aerial park presentation to be used by the prosecution, June 10th, 2004.
And there's an issue with that witness, is there?
Yeah, hang on one second. I'm just gonna get this here. Yes.
And this is going to be done out of the presence of the jury?
I think that's what the defense is requesting.
Okay, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, I have to rule on some issue here out of your presence, so we're going to excuse you. And then as soon as I've ruled on this thing one way or the other, we'll bring you back in and pick up where we left off. So if you will go out with Janae and wait until we summon you. The jury exits. Okay, the record should reflect the jury's been excused and they filed out of the courtroom. First of all, who is your next witness going to be?
Officer Wend, Your Honor, he flew in the helicopter, and what I
How do you spell it?
wanted to do,
How do you spell it?
WEND,
Okay, go ahead.
and what I wanted to do was, I just got this, I don't think it was last night. I think it was a couple of days ago, and it was one of those little animations that I showed in opening statement, just like of the whole park, but since this jury has no clue about Modesto or anything else, I wanted to show that. It's basically the same thing. I can show the court right now. It's 5 minutes long. It's basically the same thing as those aerials we've been using. It just shows the entire length of the park. I think the defense is objecting because they don't have a copy of it. And it's true. They don't. I just got it for myself. I was shown the item at the lunch hour. I imposed upon your staff to let me watch it for 5 minutes. I would like to have a copy of it prior to doing anything with this witness, because if I have a copy, they want to show it. And it's one of these key lock systems where it's a satellite photo, and then they zoom in on it and they take various angles. And if I don't have it, in order to do a cross-examination, I want to be able to take different angles and be able to ask the officer certain things about it. As it is right now, technically, I think it's argumentative because it's showing various locations and showing other things that they want to narrate. It says it's one giant leading question, so to speak, and I don't know that it's fair, and I'd be given a preview of it at 12:45 in order to cross-examine at 1:50.
That's the problem.
I will say this, Your Honor. I did offer to show it to Mr. Harris this morning. Pat Harris, not Prosecution Harris.
I assume Prosecution Harris has seen it.
He's seen it. I told him basically it's aerials of the thing, and he said he was satisfied. So, and then Mr. Garagos, I made a point of stopping at lunch and telling him I'm going to use this with the witness, and now we have this problem.
All right, let me make a solemn like decision. Is there any reason why you can't produce that present to Mr. Garagos and call this next witness to Monday so he has an opportunity to review it?
That's all I'm asking for, is that he reproduces it, gives it to me. I can do what I want to do, which is point out other certain areas.
Yeah, that's fine. You got it at the last minute. I'm not blaming you, mister.
Right.
I think this is something that's going to happen. It's going to be a chronic problem in this case because a lot of this such is coming in late. It's not your fault,
Right.
I guess.
I understand, though.
If he only gets it at the last minute, it really doesn't give him an opportunity to prepare his cross-examination. So, since it's not any big deal, it's just the park, You've already got pictures of the park. So can we call Wend out of order? You can have him come back on Monday if you want. Can you give him a copy of that over the weekend so he can take a look at it?
I can actually. What I'm going to do then is I'm just going to call Officer Wend. I won't use it. I'll use this with another witness so I can show it later.
Fine.
That will be fine.
That's fine. You call Officer Wend, and if you can use that with another witness, just prepare a copy to give to Mr. Garagos, and then for whatever it's worth, he has a chance to review it to prepare his cross-examination. Then whatever officer you call, you can even recall Officer Wend if you want.
That's fine. Okay. Hey, Captain. Good night, Earthbound. Good night, Captain. Good night, Earthbound. Good night, Captain. Okay, let's see what the next one is. Okay, this is a short one. Let's just do this one and then we'll go on to maybe we'll play the real estate game in another video or something so we can relax a little bit. Okay.
Go on to the what after this?
The real estate game or something?
Something different, you mean?
Yeah.
I can't hear. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
Yes, something different, we think.
Scooter, she said the real estate game. The real estate game.
Okay.
I'm worried. I'm really worried about scooters like this. But I can't hear. What's that on your ear? It's the speaker. I can't hear anyone. I really think the Miracle Ear. Nicole, can you try to get the Miracle Ear people to watch the broadcast?
I'll get right on that, Carolyn. Thank you.
Just show them Scooter sitting with a speaker on her ear.
Do you hear us, Scooter? Do you hear us now?
I hear you now.
I need
Chat.
my copy here.
Oh, right. Oh, my goodness. Okay.
Yes, I do too.
Okay.
Poor judge's throat gets dry. Being raspy isn't easy. Okay. John Hodson, witness for the people, guilt phase. Direct examination by Rick DeStasso.
Okay, Mr. DeSasno. Next witness.
Officer Hodson.
Officer who?
Hodson. Hodson.
Hodson. Okay. Raise your right hand. Do you solemnly state that the evidence you shall give in this matter shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? So help you God.
I do.
Be seated.
Officer, spell your O. Actually, she'll get that for you.
Spell your name for the record.
John Hodson, last name Hodson.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Officer on, well, let's just say at the beginning, you're an officer with the Modesto Police Department.
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been a sworn peace officer with the state of California?
7 years.
And you work for the Modesto Police Department that whole time?
Yes.
Then on December 24th of 2002, were you on duty that day?
I was in the afternoon, yes.
Okay, and just basically, what are your basic duties?
I'm a patrol officer, and that usually entails anything from domestic violence calls to dogs barking to theft, traffic collision, anything you would expect a police officer to take care of.
And just so the jury, you have an English accent. You didn't get that in Modesto, I take it.
No, I can't do one now. No, I didn't.
Okay, can you tell us, okay, you came on duty. What time did you come on duty that day?
It'd be about 4 p.m.
And at some time, you're asked to assist in the investigation of the Scott Peterson you found out was missing. At some point, you were asked to assist in that investigation.
Yes, that was the early hours of the following morning.
And can you just tell the jury when you were first asked to help out in this, what you were asked to do?
Yes,
Are you okay? You okay, student?
I lost my spot.
The shift that I work finished at 3:30.
Who am I? I'm not. It would be 4 p.m. Okay, the shift that I worked just finished at 3:30 in the morning. That would be the 20th. As I was coming off duty, we were told that we needed another search conducted of Laloma Park to look for the missing lady, and they asked if I would be prepared with others to work overtime and go and search the park, which I did. I got dispatched to the park about 3:45 that morning.
Let me put up another diagram that's a little bit more detailed. That's the one that's up there than the one that's up there. Actually, I'm going to ask you to come up here, hold that. You can pin that in any old place. Do you recognize this as the aerial of La Loma Park area?
Yes.
Okay, you can go back, have a seat. When you went to search the park, who was with you?
CSO Hudson, and that's Community Service Officer, and another officer, David Mullins. And also in the park, we met up with Lieutenant Bruce Abel and Sergeant Scott Heller.
And when you were down there, can you just take the jury through, if you need to use the diagram, go up, feel free to. But can you just take them and show them what parts of the park that you searched and what exactly you did down there? Where did you start at? Let's just start there.
Okay, this is not a good reputation. Representation.
Officer, there's a pointer there. You might want to avail yourself of that.
Thanks. This is not really a good representation to show where we actually came into the park, because the park is split into 3 different parks, and
Let me orient you.
this is scenic, right?
Right, there is scenic,
Right,
Covina and Encina.
right.
Did you come into the west or the east of that area?
We came into the west. There is in fact a pump house along here, which isn't shown, and there's a pathway that leads from one of these side roads. Actually, it's just like an alley that goes down into the park. And we went down into the park at the pump house, and we started searching from the pump house, initially west along the path, and I took the riverside, and the other officer took this side, which is a group of trees and like a ditch, and the community service officer drove the police car and had all the we searched along here, the 3 of us. We met up with the sergeant and the lieutenant who were working their way towards us. When they came from this area, when we completed this search, we then went back to the pump house. The sergeant and lieutenant drove further up, and they started to work back towards us. And we, keeping the same positions, went eastward from the mentioned pump house until we got to the end of Laloma Park, where there's a public restroom. And the last thing I did was, I was told to search the restroom after we completed the search, and that's what I did. Check the restroom, nobody in it. And then we were allowed to resume.
La Loma Park area. When you got to the end of La Loma Park, is that where the tennis courts are?
Yes,
So if you look on the diagram, you search the area all the way from here?
all the way from here.
All the way down to where the tennis courts are?
Yes,
And I think the restrooms are right in here somewhere.
yes.
Okay. Go ahead, have a seat.
Thank you.
And while you were down there searching, did you see any officers or anybody searching from above the Loma area coming back down towards you?
Actually, outside of the park, I didn't see anybody. Inside the park, yes, because as I said, the sergeant and the lieutenant, after we'd met, after we were going westbound, they were going eastbound on the west side of the pump house, the pump station, and we met. And then we searched the pump station, and then they moved down to the far end of the Loma, and they started working back westward as we started working eastward from the pump station. And we did maybe begin about halfway along the path.
And how long do you think you were down there searching in the park?
Couple of hours.
And did you then, you obviously didn't find Lacey Peterson.
No.
All right, did you speak to any people down there in the park?
Yes, I did.
And can you tell us about that? What did you run into people in, where did you run into people in the park?
Along the riverbank, there were several, call them shelters, homeless people. They build tents or lean-tos or whatever, and they live out by the side of the river. So as I was going down by the side of the river, I was coming across these encampments, announcing myself, and these people were coming out to greet me, and I was searching through their encampments and their property.
And did these people say anything like they had been searched before? Objection, calls for hearsay.
Hearsay.
Actually, Your Honor, I'm asking if not for the truth, but to show why the officer was doing what he was doing.
Well, we know he was searching for Lacey Peterson's body, he said.
Okay, so you did come across folks down there?
Yes, I did.
You told them, hey, I'm searching here, I'm coming in through here,
Yes,
and they let you come in,
yes,
and you searched through their stuff?
yes.
Some of them were upset because,
Oh,
oh, sorry.
some of them were upset because they told me this was the third time that they had been turned over or that people had been through
Objection.
looking.
Hearsay. Motion to strike.
Okay, but what harm does it do? Do you want me?
None. In actuality, I was just trying to hold to the evidence code.
I know. Well, we can I'll sustain the objection. I'll ask the jury to disregard.
All right, that's fine. And after you searched down through there and you did these things, did you end your shift for the night?
Yes,
Okay. Did you also search the next day, anytime on the 25th?
no, I'm not sure. I believe we were off duty that day, so we weren't involved in any further after that.
All right. Did you, I just can't remember. That's why I'm going to ask you the last question. Did you have any other involvement in the searches for Lacey Peterson as the kind of days went by?
No, none.
Thank you. Your Honor, nothing further.
Cross-examination by Mark Garagos.
Mr. Garagos,
Thank you. Officer Hodson,
Yes,
the searches down by the creek?
yes,
Approximately, so I've got it correct. This took place on, actually on Christmas Day.
yeah, yes,
The early morning of Christmas Day.
yes.
And you were searching. Can you point out where on these encampments are, where some of these are that you ran into?
The best I can tell you from this, as I say, because it's an overview, the best I can tell you is that they were down by the side of the river in this general area.
Okay, now you're pointing to if we were to go from the Cavina house, there's a little trail at the end of the cul-de-sac, correct?
Yes,
And that takes you right down in the park, right?
yes, in that area, yes.
Okay, and if you turn to the left and as we're facing it, that's heading in what direction?
That's west.
West. Approximately how far is that from the end of the cul-de-sac?
To the encampment?
Yeah, the encampment.
Okay, I would put that within a quarter to a third of a mile.
Within a quarter to a third of a mile.
Yes.
And that evening, you call it evening, but it's really early morning hours. How many different encampments of people did you see down there?
I personally went through about 3,
And total number of people?
7 or 8.
Okay, now the area that you're pointing to, was there any other encampments besides that area? What did you say, a quarter to a half a mile away?
I didn't see any, and I didn't see any as I came that way.
Okay, now I think Mr. the prosecutor, Mr. DeStasso, pointed to Scenic as being up here.
This is scenic.
Okay, this street, the large thoroughfare.
Yes.
Is there a hospital here as well?
Yes.
Where is the hospital?
As far as I can tell from this is the hospital.
And is that right above where the encampments are that you saw, or is it fairly close?
It's close. The encampments were more to the east in this direction.
Okay, approximately. I'm not going to hold you to it. But within 400 or 500 yards?
I would say roughly, yes.
Okay. Now, if you were to walk in, is there a... You've already established, I guess, there's a trail right here. You've been to the Cavina house.
Yes.
Okay.
I've been, well, not actually in it. I've been by it.
By it. From the Covina house to the trail is approximately how far?
I'll put that probably just over a quarter of a mile.
Okay, and then to the encampments?
About the same, quarter to a third.
Okay, and in that area, how long have you patrolled in Modesto?
7 years.
7 years, and you're familiar with that park area.
And for the amount of time I've worked for that area, yeah.
Okay.
Which is not obviously all the time.
Is there somebody in the Modesto PD that's in charge of that area? Is that like a zone of some kind?
Well, we have area commands, and the area commander is usually a lieutenant, and that has changed over the last year. And
Back in...
I'm not sure who the lieutenant was at that time.
Okay, that area that you're searching, that included portions that are farther to the left than on the aerial photo.
Actually, the park ends over here, somewhere in this area, and that's where the park actually finishes. And I came to this area around here.
Okay, can you describe for the jury what that area is right there?
There is actually a small group. As I said, this whole area is divided into different parks, although it's on the same belt. And over here we have, I believe it's Kewen Park, and the other side of the river is Moose Park. And La Loma Park comes all the way down to like a dead end where there's a small footbridge that actually goes over into Kewen.
Okay. If I got my bearings down here, if somebody goes down that trail, you can walk. I'll use this. I'll make it a little easier. You walk down the trail. You walk down here. There's a footbridge that goes over. Is that the creek it goes over?
Yes,
And that's as you're walking along up to your right is the hospital, correct?
that's right. It would probably, at that stage, it would just be probably looking up maybe 1 o'clock.
Right.
Yeah, it would be up ahead, just a little.
And then as you make your left, you go across a fairly wide. And when I say a fairly wide, what about 6 or 8 foot wide footbridge?
Yes,
Okay, and that takes you into an area that is like a large grass area,
like a park, yes.
like a park. And then it has, if you walk across that grass area after you come from that bridge, there are steps to take you back up to the street, right?
Yes.
And what street is that?
Where that comes out, it comes out at La Loma and Edgebrook Drive.
Right, then basically what happens is that this is the end of Covina, and now I'm pointing you to the People's 33. If you travel down Covina into the park and you go around down the footbridge, you come up and there are stairs that are right over here.
Right.
And you come back on Edgebrook,
Right,
And it takes you right smack dab into Covina, doesn't it?
yes,
And now, did you say you met up with Lieutenant Abel at one point?
yes.
Okay, where was that?
That was, he was working his way from the place you just described as where the bridge is. He was working eastward as we were working westward, and we met approximately in the middle. We both covered an equal distance and met along the path.
There's some restrooms down there at the end of that park where you go across the footbridge.
That would be to what Kewen Park.
Could you spell that, please?
I think it's Kewin. I couldn't, my English pronunciation doesn't always.
Translate?
Right.
Okay, the Kewen Park area that we call, where's that large grass expanses?
Yes.
And there's some restrooms there, and there's just over from where this encamped, there's 3 encampments where that you saw
Right.
that evening.
Right.
It goes under the bridge, and that would be the Morton Boulevard. Oh, I'm sorry, that's your line.
It
And
goes
in
under
addition
the
to that,
bridge.
farther there, of course, there's a creek that goes under a large road. What's the road there?
It goes under the bridge, then that would be Morton Boulevard.
Okay, that's approximately how far from the Covina house?
That's probably coming up on a mile.
And that would be the, when you say coming up on a mile, that area where the creek goes underneath the larger thoroughfare.
Right.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Any other questions?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, officer.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Oh, thank you, Sharon and Scooter, for reading with us tonight.
You're
Hi, V.
welcome.
You're a bit tired, V? Oh, we're going to play the real estate game. I'm going to make a new live. Don't you want to play that really fun game? Maybe we'll do the headlines and then the real estate game. What?
Who said they were tired?
V, and then in the
Marco.
chat. V, no, V.
Right?
Not Marco, V.
No, we're gonna play the
No,
real.
I see Margot. You're right, I
Marco.
see
Polo. I thought she was playing Marco Polo.
Hello. Hello. Aren't we? Hello.
Polo.
Oh, no.
Oh my goodness. It's turning into. Okay. So I'm going to just quickly do something here.
Will be redirected, correct?
Yeah, in a minute.
Corrected. Redirected, corrected. Scooter, you're not gonna leave, are you? You're gonna play the real estate game with us.
I'm gonna hang around for a while, yeah.
Okay.
For real tonight, if you get the bid right, you do win the house.
This is
Oh, is that how that works?
Nicole contacted the realtors and they said we can give away these houses tonight.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You get to keep them.
Coming in.
Woohoo!
You get a house. You just have to get the number right.
Yeah, but they want it exact. You have to have the exact number.
That number. Yeah.
It can't be like within $1,000 or even $500 off. It has to be the exact amount.
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, so it's gonna be really, really fun tonight. So let me.
Awesome. Woohoo, yeah.
Oh
Yeah,
my
great.
gosh, okay. We're gonna go over one thing when we go over there, and it's gonna be really weird. Okay, so you better follow us over there.
I have to heat the oven to warm up my pizza.
Okay. Oh my gosh, she fell.
Oh, drop my phone.
Did you fail?
No, I was just charging my phone. I knocked it over.
Okay.
Under the floor. It's okay.
Right.
As long as you don't fall in your.
I'm scheduling a stream. Scheduling a stream.
Trying
Well,
to
that
be
woke me up.
careful in the future, Officer Scooter.
You're
I
welcome.
know, it perked me up too. Did someone say?
That woke me up. That woke me up.
You're welcome.
Scooter.
I said you're both welcome. You're both welcome since I woke you up.
Come
You deliver?
Did you transfer?
on. I'm down the thumbnail. I mean, I'm redoing that right now. I'm just gotta find it.
All right.
Okay.
Did y'all hear my door squeaking?
No.
No?
No.
Have you seen that like coyote or whatever lately? Or whatever it was you saw before?
Uh-huh.
Do you remember when you saw that like wild animal or something that was chasing
Oh,
your
yeah, the human. Yes, the cat, the other cat.
Yeah. Did you ever see that thing again?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god, I was thinking about that the
It
other
always leers it over. Yeah, it's a house cat, somebody's house cat. It hasn't been around for a while now. But, oh yeah, a whole bunch of times after that.
I thought it was a bobcat. Wasn't it a huge cat?
Yeah, it's a big cat. Darn, it loves teasing it. And she's terrified of it once it gets here.
Well, at least
It
it's not a
moans and flies in here.
I thought it was a bobcat.
I know, it sounded like it.
We have the coyotes here.
We do
Yeah,
too.
we
We
could
kept
those two.
laughing.
Yeah. There's a siren or anything.
You sounds like they're laughing though, like cackling.
Yeah, and it's
Cackling.
It's
crazy.
really creepy. When I lived in Kentucky,
We did that on
that's
the
all
lake.
you
We
could
called
hear.
somebody the
Just like
cackling.
laughing in the woods. Like it was like, oh god,
Did you see the video my husband showed me today?
no.
It was a coyote
We'll see you.
trying to take a child, a little girl.
Oh, no.
Are you kidding me?
I think I've seen that